The British royal family has long been synonymous with tradition, ceremony, and an unbroken chain of expectation. But in recent weeks, the palace walls have reverberated with whispers of tension, secrets, and a reality that even centuries of protocol could not contain. At the heart of this storm is Prince Edward, the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II, a figure who has long moved quietly through the corridors of power, often overshadowed by his more prominent siblings. Yet behind his unassuming demeanor lies a story that has sent shockwaves through the monarchy itself. For decades, it was assumed that King Charles III, as the firstborn, would inherit the lion's share of the Queen's private wealth. Traditions had dictated it. Royal observers had accepted it. Generations had passed with this expectation taken as law. But tradition, as history reminds us, does not always align with reality. Behind closed doors, the Queen's intentions were far more deliberate, precise, and, to many, startling. Her legal documents, sealed from public view, contained decisions that would quietly disrupt assumptions held for decades. When Edward's lawyers finally spoke, their confirmation shocked the palace. Certain assets, once assumed to belong to Charles by custom, were in fact destined for Edward. These were not trivial items or symbolic gestures. They included vast estates, major financial holdings, and priceless personal collections accumulated over decades of careful stewardship. Every document, every clause, every signature carried weight that no royal assumption could override. Suddenly, the very foundations of presumed entitlement were called into question, and a quiet, patient prince became the central figure in a legal reality that no one had anticipated. What makes this story remarkable is Edward's approach. He did not storm the palace corridors or broadcast grievances. He did not seek to humiliate or confront publicly. Instead, he moved with calculated restraint, allowing law, procedure, and patience to define his path. While others might have viewed silence as weakness, Edward's quiet consistency became his strength. He meticulously followed legal channels, gathering records, clarifying ownership, and asserting his rights without drama or spectacle. This is a prince who understood that in the world of royalty, perception often matters as much as reality, and timing can be as crucial as truth. The legal confirmation did more than merely redistribute assets. It forced the royal family to confront uncomfortable truths about assumption, entitlement, and the limits of tradition. For decades, the belief that the eldest son inherits everything was never questioned. It shaped decisions, expectations, and even public narratives. Yet the Queen's choices reminded everyone that ultimate authority rests not in hierarchy, but in clarity, precision, and deliberate intent. Her pen, not tradition, defined the final word. Edward's actions also highlight a deeper theme, the balance between loyalty and self-respect. For years, he fulfilled his duties quietly, supporting the monarchy without complaint, avoiding scandal, and standing steadfast in the background while his siblings garnered headlines. He maintained family bonds, respected public perception, and upheld a standard of service rarely acknowledged by observers. Yet even the most patient individual reaches a point where fairness demands action. When the time came, Edward asserted his rights firmly but respectfully, proving that loyalty and principle can coexist with self-advocacy. The impact on the monarchy has been profound. While the public saw a calm announcement of titles and honors, the private reality was far more complex. Charles, accustomed to authority reinforced by centuries of tradition, found himself confronted by legal documentation that challenged long-held assumptions. The transition, often perceived as seamless, revealed cracks in the surface, a reminder that even royal power is bound by law, logic, and human intent. No crown, no ceremony, no inherited assumption can substitute for documented clarity. Moreover, this episode sheds light on the human dimensions of royalty. Behind every crown and ceremonial gesture are individuals navigating relationships, trust, and expectations. Decisions made privately can have ramifications that ripple outward, affecting perception, influence, and family dynamics. Edward's story is a testament to the fact that even in the most structured environments, fairness, principle, and deliberate action can redefine outcomes. It demonstrates that quiet, thoughtful persistence often carries more power than spectacle or privilege alone. The details of the inheritance dispute also reveal the fragility of assumption. For years, Charles acted on the belief that certain private assets were his by right. He made decisions, collected income, and managed affairs under that assumption. Yet legally, he had no claim, Ownership remained with the Queen, and only her documented intentions held sway. This collision between expectation and legal reality underscores a vital truth. Authority is not inherent. It is defined, documented, and enforceable. No amount of tradition can substitute for clarity. For Edward, the resolution was not about personal gain. It was about respect, principle, and honoring the intentions of the monarch who had guided him all his life. By asserting his rights through proper legal channels, he demonstrated a model of responsibility, patience, and courage that contrasts sharply with assumptions of entitlement. In doing so, he redefined his role within the royal family, transitioning from a quiet observer to a figure whose actions command acknowledgement and respect. This quiet legal battle also provides insight into the modern monarchy. It is a world where public perception, ceremonial tradition, and centuries-old expectations collide with legal realities and personal agency. Even the most revered institutions are not immune to human oversight, and the decisions of a single individual can ripple outward, reshaping narratives, relationships, and authority. Edward's story reminds us that monarchy, despite its grandeur, is ultimately governed by the same principles of justice, evidence, and fairness that shape everyday life today in the aftermath. The royal family must reconcile the appearance of unity with the realities of change. Edward's assertion of his rights has not created conflict for conflict's sake. It has highlighted the importance of adherence to principle, even when it disrupts long-standing norms. For the public, the episode is a rare glimpse into the inner workings of an institution often shrouded in ritual and ceremony, revealing the interplay of law, loyalty, and individual agency. As the story continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the quietest voices can carry the greatest impact. Edward's patience, precision, and adherence to principle have set a precedent within the monarchy, proving that careful, deliberate action can challenge assumptions, uphold justice, and redefine legacies. It is a story not of rebellion, but of responsibility, restraint, and the enduring power of truth. The legacy of this moment extends beyond mere inheritance. It is a reminder that even within the grandeur of royalty, human principles, law, fairness, and integrity remain paramount. The story demonstrates that the exercise of power must always coexist with accountability, and that genuine authority is grounded not in expectation, but in enforceable clarity. For viewers, this narrative offers a lens into the complexities of royal life. Behind the pomp and ceremony lie decisions shaped by human intention, personal judgment, and the delicate balance between loyalty and self-respect. Edward's journey is emblematic of this delicate equilibrium, showing that strength often manifests quietly, patiently, and with unshakable principle. Ultimately, this story is about more than assets, titles, or family dynamics. It is about the enduring truths that govern human behavior, that fairness matters, that law can correct assumption, and that even within centuries-old institutions, integrity prevails. The silent brother has spoken, and in doing so, reshaped the narrative of the British monarchy for generations to come. The confirmation of Edward's inheritance serves as both a legal precedent and a moral lesson, revealing that patience, diligence, and principled action can achieve what power alone cannot. For the monarchy, it is a turning point, reminding all members, heir or otherwise, that authority is neither assumed nor absolute, but earned through clarity, respect, and deliberate action that lie in the quiet corridors of the palace, where history and tradition intersect. Edward's story resonates as a modern parable, that even the smallest voice, when guided by principle, can challenge the largest assumptions. The implications for the royal family are profound, altering the perception of entitlement, responsibility, and the exercise of power within an institution that has long been seen as unchangeable today. As historians, observers, and the public reflect on this unprecedented moment, it becomes clear that the monarchy is not immune to the realities of accountability. Edward's quiet assertion demonstrates that in any system, no matter how ancient or ceremonious, the law remains the ultimate arbiter, capable of reshaping expectations, redefining roles, and delivering justice where tradition alone cannot. This story, still unfolding, captures the tension, the strategy, and the human complexity behind one of the most influential families in the world. It reminds us that beneath the crowns, the ceremonies, and the pageantry, there exist individuals whose choices, patience, and adherence to principle have the power to alter history itself. That in the end, Prince Edward's careful, calculated, and principled approach has achieved what many thought impossible. It has asserted fairness, confirmed legal rights, and reminded the world that even royalty must respect law, intention, and integrity. It is a story of patience, justice, and quiet revolution within the gilded halls of power, a narrative that will resonate for generations, redefining what it means to wield authority responsibly. The revelation sent shockwaves not only through Buckingham Palace, but also across the global media. Every royal commentator, historian, and casual observer was suddenly forced to rethink what they thought they knew about succession, inheritance, and the very dynamics that underpin the British monarchy. For years, narratives have been written, assumptions have been repeated, and the story of primogeniture, the eldest inheriting the most, had been accepted without question. Yet here, in the quiet corridors of law and legacy, those assumptions have been appended to Edward's inheritance, confirmed by legal authorities, underscores a truth that many find uncomfortable. Even in the world of kings and queens, assumptions are fragile, and tradition is never absolute. The younger prince, once perceived as secondary, now emerged as a key player in a story that tests the boundaries between family loyalty, personal rights, and institutional authority. What the public witnessed on the surface, a calm transfer of titles, a polite acknowledgement of service, belied the intricate and unprecedented legal maneuvers unfolding behind closed doors. It is important to remember who Prince Edward is. Born into a family steeped in history and expectation, he did not seek the limelight or crave public adoration. From childhood, he displayed an unusual independence, often exploring creative pursuits rather than following the rigid path that his elder siblings tread. He left military training, pursued theater, and eventually carved a career in media production. Many criticize his choices, labeling them as a lack of discipline or understanding of duty, yet in hindsight, they reveal a character accustomed to thinking independently, carefully assessing risks, and charting a path guided by principle rather than assumption. This independence was critical when the Queen's will came into play. Unlike many heirs before him, Edward approached the inherited assets with a keen understanding of the law, precision in documentation, and patience in execution. He understood that in the world of royalty, appearances often mask reality, and that justice, even within a palace, is achieved through careful adherence to legal principles. The lawyers he engaged were not just advocates. They were instruments ensuring that centuries of unchallenged expectations would not override the Queen's deliberate intentions. The implications extend beyond mere property or wealth. At stake was authority, perception, and the very fabric of trust within the royal family. Charles, trained and conditioned to inherit, suddenly faced a situation where the law, not his expectations, defined the outcome. The psychological impact of such a realization is profound. For decades, one grows up believing in entitlement reinforced by history, only to have that assumption challenged, not by rebellion or dissent, but by clarity, legality, and deliberate documentation. The lesson here is stark. Even kings are accountable to law and reason. Moreover, this episode highlights the modern monarchy's evolving relationship with transparency and justice. For generations, royal wills and private assets were shrouded in mystery. The public rarely glimpsed the decisions that defined wealth, influence, and legacy. Edward's case demonstrates that even in an era of pageantry, the enforcement of rights, the adherence to principle, and the assertion of fairness can and will challenge long-held narratives. The silent prince, long overlooked, became an agent of accountability in a system built on centuries of assumption. The story is also a study in restraint. Edward did not publicly challenge his brother. He did not seek headlines. Instead, he allowed the legal process to speak, fully aware that the optics of confrontation could undermine public perception and destabilize a monarchy during a period of transition. His approach was calculated, patient, and ultimately effective, a demonstration that influence is not always exercised loudly. Sometimes, the most enduring power lies in quiet precision, methodical action, and unwavering commitment to principle. In the days following the confirmation, palace insiders reportedly observed a subtle but profound shift. Edward's stature, previously defined by discretion and loyalty, now carried the weight of verified authority. His siblings, and indeed the monarch himself, had to reckon with the fact that law and documented intent could supersede tradition, expectation, and even long-standing family hierarchy. The psychological and institutional ramifications are vast. Authority within the monarchy is not merely ceremonial, it is legally grounded, and this episode has clarified the limits of inherited assumption. Observers across the world have taken note. Analysts, historians, and legal experts alike see this as a moment of recalibration for the British royal family. Edward's assertion of his rights is more than a personal victory. It is a case study in governance, law, and principle within one of the world's oldest institutions. It is a narrative that demonstrates that fairness, patience, and careful execution can redefine the rules even in a system historically resistant to change. The Queen's intentions, once assumed to favor the eldest, were in fact precise, deliberate, and egalitarian in their own way. By allocating key assets to Edward, she ensured that the monarchy's legacy was not solely concentrated but diversified, acknowledging the contributions of a son who had consistently demonstrated loyalty, stability, and discretion. Her choices challenge assumptions and illuminate the subtle ways in which foresight, planning, and clarity shape the continuity of power. In a broader context, this episode serves as a lens into the modern expectations of monarchy in the 21st century. It is no longer sufficient to rely on tradition alone. Transparency, accountability, and adherence to legal principles are increasingly central. Edward's actions exemplify the balance required, upholding respect for family, monarchy, and history, while also asserting rights that have been legally confirmed. It is a delicate equilibrium, achieved through discipline, patience, and strategic foresight that as we reflect on the impact of this revelation, it is clear that Edward's story is about more than wealth or titles. It is about integrity, resilience, and the power of principle over assumption. It demonstrates that even in the gilded halls of power, justice, law, and fairness remain paramount. The lessons extend far beyond the palace walls, serving as a reminder that clarity, patience, and adherence to principle can challenge assumptions and redefine long-standing narratives. Ultimately, the confirmation of Edward's inheritance has reshaped both perception and reality. The monarchy, an institution defined by hierarchy and ritual, has been reminded that power alone does not determine outcomes. Legal clarity, deliberate intention, and principled action do. Edward, the quietest of princes, has emerged as a symbol of resilience, patience, and justice, a reminder that even in the most tradition-bound systems, fairness and law hold the final word. For historians, legal scholars, and royal observers, the ramifications of this event will be analyzed for years to come. Edward's careful, measured, and principled approach offers lessons in governance, family dynamics, and the intersection of tradition and law. It is a narrative that reinforces the enduring importance of clarity, precision, and adherence to principle in any system of authority. In the end, the Silent Brothers' assertion is a story of quiet revolution. It challenges assumptions, redefines expectations, and demonstrates the enduring power of patience, precision, and principle. In the intricate tapestry of the British monarchy, Edward's actions remind us that even the most seemingly subordinate figures can alter the course of history when guided by law, fairness, and unwavering integrity. Even as the palace maintained its public composure, the undercurrents of tension were undeniable. For decades, the royal narrative had been carefully managed, stories told in measured statements, and assumptions rarely questioned. Yet, Edward's legal affirmation shattered that equilibrium, exposing a deeper truth. Behind the polished ceremony and glittering crowns, the monarchy operates in a world as human and fallible as any other. It is a realm where loyalty, expectation, and personal ambition collide, often quietly, yet profoundly. This episode is not merely a legal dispute. It is a window into the evolution of monarchy itself. The British royal family, while steeped in tradition, is not immune to scrutiny or accountability. Edward's actions highlight a fundamental principle. Legitimacy is not inherited through assumption. It is enforced through law, careful documentation, and adherence to principle. In doing so, he reminded the world that even royalty, with all its prestige and history, is bound by rules that are tangible, enforceable, and inescapable. The drama is heightened by Edward's temperament. Throughout his life, he has been the quiet observer, the steadfast supporter, the brother who avoided scandal, refrained from confrontation, and consistently honored his duties without seeking the spotlight. Yet, this quiet exterior masked a deep understanding of power, responsibility, and timing. When the moment arose to assert his legal rights, Edward did so not with anger, but with measured precision. His restraint only amplified the impact, demonstrating that true influence is often exercised subtly, methodically, and without unnecessary fanfare. Observers note that Edward's approach is a study in strategic patience. While others might have publicly challenged his brother, Creating headlines and controversy, he relied on the weight of evidence, the authority of documentation, and the unassailable power of law. It was a quiet revolution, one executed without spectacle yet with undeniable effect. This contrast between the loud assertion of assumed entitlement and the calm, methodical claim of rightful ownership defines the modern dynamic of power within the royal family. The implications for King Charles III are equally profound. For decades, he had operated under a deeply ingrained expectation of inheritance, supported by centuries of precedent. To have that expectation challenged, not through rebellion but through law, introduce a reckoning. The experience illustrates a subtle but powerful lesson. Authority, however historic, is never absolute. The crown may symbolize power, yet even kings are accountable to evidence, clarity, and the deliberate intent of those who preceded them. The Edward story also invites reflection on the human dimension of royalty. Beyond the titles, estates, and ceremonial duties lies a network of relationships, trust, and deeply personal decisions. The Queen's deliberate allocation of assets underscores her recognition of Edward's integrity, discretion, and loyalty, qualities that, while quiet, carry immense weight in sustaining the monarchy across generations. In acknowledging his contributions, she balanced tradition with fairness, ensuring that her youngest son's service was recognized in a manner both legally binding and symbolically significant. The episode further illuminates the delicate interplay between public perception and private reality. For the outside world, the royal family may appear as a seamless unit, bound by ceremony and pageantry. Yet the legal affirmation of Edward's inheritance reveals the complexities beneath, the negotiations, the documentation, the careful deliberation that determines the balance of authority and privilege. It is a vivid reminder that monarchy, like any institution, must reconcile legacy with law, expectation with principle, and public image with private truth. Moreover, the story offers a broader lesson about justice, patience, and strategy. Edward did not rush. He did not act impulsively. He allowed processes to unfold, relied on trusted advisors, and ultimately let evidence speak louder than assumption. In doing so, he demonstrated that fairness is not always immediate, that recognition may require endurance, and that quiet diligence can achieve outcomes that spectacle often cannot. Today, as historians and analysts dissect this development, one theme emerges clearly: the power of principle over expectation. Edward's assertion reminds the world that even in institutions defined by hierarchy and centuries-old precedent, adherence to law, clarity of intent, and disciplined action shape outcomes. It is a narrative that resonates far beyond the palace, offering lessons about fairness, accountability, and the subtle ways in which influence is exercised and recognized. The confirmation of Edward's inheritance has also shifted the perception of loyalty within the royal family. Historically, loyalty was measured by public compliance, discretion, and adherence to tradition. Edward's actions redefined this concept, showing that loyalty is not passive. It is active, informed, and principled. He remained steadfast, respected tradition, but also recognized when intervention was necessary to uphold fairness. Finally, the ripple effects of this revelation extend beyond property or titles. It influences how the monarchy navigates succession, family dynamics, and public trust in the modern era. Edward's careful yet decisive assertion establishes a precedent. Even the most entrenched assumptions are vulnerable when confronted by law and evidence. It is a turning point, highlighting that authority, respect, and recognition are earned not solely through birthright, but through deliberate, principled action. The revelation of Edward's inheritance not only sent shockwaves through the royal household, but also underscored the delicate balance between tradition and law. For centuries, assumptions about royal succession and property allocation had gone unquestioned, forming an invisible architecture that shaped the expectations of heirs. Yet, Edward's legal confirmation disrupted this long-standing equilibrium, revealing that even the most entrenched beliefs are vulnerable to scrutiny and evidence. This event exposed a subtle but profound tension that exists between what is assumed, what is expected, and what is legally enforceable, shining a light on the human and institutional complexities that underpin monarchy itself. To eye in the corridors of the palace, whispers of astonishment mingled with respect for Edward's measured approach. He did not publicly challenge his brother, nor did he create scandal. Instead, he relied on the authority of documentation and legal procedure. Each document, signature, and clause served as an unassailable statement. The assets in question belonged not to the reigning king, but to him Edward, as explicitly designated by their mother's final will. The quiet, deliberate assertion of rights contrasted sharply with the assumptions of entitlement, emphasizing that inheritance is not merely a matter of tradition, it is a matter of law, clarity, and intention. The broader implications of this confirmation are staggering. For King Charles, it presented a humbling lesson. Authority, however historic, is never absolute. Prestige, ceremony, and long-standing assumptions do not grant unchallenged access to assets or influence. Even within the gilded halls of monarchy, accountability is enforced through legal frameworks, and clarity of intent supersedes hierarchical expectation. This confrontation between assumption and reality forces a reassessment of power, reminding both the royals and the public that legitimacy must be verified, not merely presumed. Beyond the legalities, Edward's actions illustrate the quiet power of restraint and strategic patience. Throughout his life, he had been the steadfast, reliable presence, avoiding scandal, maintaining discretion, and fulfilling duties without seeking attention. Yet this very patience became a source of immense influence when exercised at a pivotal moment. Edward's methodical approach, relying on evidence rather than confrontation, demonstrates that influence does not always emerge from visibility or aggression. Often, it emerges from careful, deliberate, and principled action. The narrative also reflects on the monarchy's human dimension. Behind ceremonial pomp and media-managed appearances lie decisions rooted in trust, judgment, and careful calculation. The Queen's decision to allocate significant assets to Edward recognizes not just his loyalty but also his consistent integrity, discretion, and steadfast commitment.